After 25 years in Congress and 5 years as Speaker of the House, John Boehner surprised some people today by saying he's calling it quits and retiring, stepping down at the end of October. Here with some analysis and perspective, our man in Washington, Casteel, joins us from Skype today. How are you, sir?
I'm just fine, Dave. Thanks.
Well, I was surprised. Were you surprised by the announcement?
Mildly surprised by the timing, definitely, Dave. I mean, I didn't think that he would run for another term after this one was set to expire at the end of next year. I mean, there's just no way with all the strain that he's had, and the constant tension with the Tea Party types. But I was a little bit surprised that he's going to go ahead and get out of here in October. It gives him some freedom, though, in the next month to go ahead and pass kind of a temporary spending bill that keeps the government open without having to fight over Planned Parenthood. He can get that done. They can keep the government open for a few more weeks, maybe a couple more months. Then he can let the next speaker come in and who's free of all this past tension with the Jim Bridenstine types, the Tulsa Republican, and other Tea Party types who really don't like Boehner. Let the next speaker deal with some really big issues coming down the pike. That's another hike in the debt ceiling, and sequestration, which are the automatic budget cuts, another round of which would probably decimate the U.S. military.
Before we look forward as to who might run for that or be successor to that office, what is Boehner's legacy?
Well, I think some of the spending deals that are in place, and they're ones that maybe a lot of people don't appreciate, especially the Tea Party types. But when you think about the deals early in President Obama's administration, when the Republicans took over in 2011, you had debt ceiling crisis, you had budget issues, and they did come up with this. And one of them came up with this budget gimmick, some people would call that, the sequestration, the automatic budget cuts. But they have, beyond argument, cut spending but below what it's been historically for many years, and that's a real deal. One thing I pointed out today that a lot of people, they really went under the radar because it's kind of technical. It's kind of a beltway issue, or at least one that's kind of specific to Medicare and doctors. Is he and Nancy Pelosi got together kind of secretly, I guess, came out with an agreement on how to fix this recurring problem with physician payments from Medicare. It just came up all the time, and they would do temporary, quote, doc fixes. Well, they came up with what was really a kind of an under-the-radar entitlement reform. So, those are some of them.
Chatting with the Oklahoman's reporter in Washington, D.C., Casteel via Skype on this Friday afternoon, and looking ahead, Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy among those as possible successors. Who else are you hearing?
Well, he's the main one for Speaker. I mean, I'm sure he's lining up his support. I talked to Oklahoma Congressman Frank Lucas a few minutes ago. He's our longest-serving House member from Oklahoma. Came up here in 1994. He said he's inclined to support McCarthy, and I would think that McCarthy, who's from Bakersfield, California, maybe some Oklahoma. I need to look into that. There's so many Bakersfield people with Oklahoma connections. That was a big Dust Bowl landing spot, was Bakersfield. But anyway, he's expected to get it. I haven't heard any other name to run against him. There may be a Tea Party name that emerges, but McCarthy's move upward, he's in the number 2 spot now, would obviously set off some kind of some dominoes below him in the leadership ranks. Somebody would obviously need to move up into the number 2 spot, and there's some rumors going around that Markwayne Mullin, who's a sophomore congressman from eastern Oklahoma, Republican, would run for the number 3 spot, which is called the whip. And it's very preliminary at this point. Frank Lucas told me that he's heard a lot of people are urging Markwayne Mullin to run for that spot. It would be interesting to see that happen, not just from the Oklahoma angle, but Markwayne Mullin term limited himself, to 3 terms in the House, which are, the terms are 2 years. He's down to 3 years, and normally, you don't run for a leadership spot knowing that you're leaving in that short a time frame. You become a lame duck almost immediately. Really, I mean, if he sticks with his commitment, his term limit commitment, then next 2016 will be his last election, and again he would become an immediate lame duck. So we'll see. He may not even run for the leadership spot, but if he does, then I think the whole term limit issue back in his district is going to be really interesting to see whether he goes back to his district and say, hey, I've got this opportunity to be the number 3 leader in the House. Do you mind if I stay longer? One interesting historical note is that the last, if he were, and there's a huge hypothetical, if he were to run for the number 3 spot and get it, the whip spot, it'd be the highest leadership position that an Oklahoman has held in the House since Carl Albert was the Speaker of the House. Oklahoman Carl Albert was the Speaker of the House in the mid-1970s. And by coincidence, Mark Wayne is actually in that same, he represents Carl Albert's old hometown now.
Interesting perspective from Chris Casteel, and we certainly appreciate your time this afternoon. John Boehner basically having his audience with the Pope yesterday and dropping the mic today, right?
Yeah, and in his press conference this afternoon, he said that, and there was Lucas said that he felt like the speaker was really preoccupied with the papal visit. Speaker Boehner is a Catholic, and he really was looking forward to that and wanted that to go well. It did go well. And he said this morning it wasn't because of the visit in any way that he decided to leave now, but that it did give him some perspective. So it's interesting.
Very good. You can follow Chris Casteel's coverage on Twitter. He's a fantastic follow at News OK Politics, and his coverage in the Oklahoman and News OK as well. Have a good weekend, sir.
You too, Dave. Thanks so much.